Jim Beard, John C. Bruening, welcome to Suit Up the Podcast.
Hey,
Thanks to be good to be here.
I am really excited. We have been playing a bit of schedule tag to make this happen. Guys, 10 years, a decade of Flinch books. Before we get too far into it, would you mind just each introducing yourselves to the audience? That way they know what your voice sounds like, who you are, and gives a brief refresher. Both of you are returning guests. Thank you for braving being on the podcast again.
mm,
It's true.
age
Jim, go
age
ahead. You're the
before
young.
beauty.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay. All right. Okay. For the context of this conversation, I'm John. I am the co-founder of Flinch Books. I've been a professional writer for, as of this week, 40 years. Um,
Congratulations.
Thank you. I've written just about everything. I did 15 years of journalism, about 20 plus years of marketing, full-time freelance. Started writing fiction about 12 years ago, or started getting serious about writing fiction 12 years ago. And we launched Flinch Books in the very beginning of 2015, correct, Jim?
Hmm. Yeah,
Glorious time.
that's
Yep.
true. Mm. I I haven't been writing as long. I've been a professional writer for 23 years. I think 2002 was my first professional sale. And that was, yeah, wait a minute. No, that was a comic book. So I guess I have been writing fiction for that long. Um, I am the co-founder of Flinch Books too. And we're celebrating 10 years this year. And I'm also the founder of Becky Books, which isn't 10 years old yet, but it's more like
Four?
six. Let's say five to
Yeah.
be safe. Five. So about half the time for that.
I
And we're
remember,
both from Ohio.
hey, you
Yes.
guys are both from Ohio, which
From the
the other half of the Midwest.
Now,
wait a
wait,
minute.
somebody
The the
somebody
Great
just
Lakes.
somebody just did that to me. They said I was on a podcast and somebody said, "Oh, Jim Beard, King of the Midwest" or something like that. And I said, "Wait a minute." I said we like to call ourselves the Great Lakes area
The
right
Mhm.
Rust
here.
Belt.
It's I mean that it's considered the Midwest, which I never really understood anyways, but
Okay, I feel a little
I
bit
like to
better
call it
about
the
that
Great
now.
Lakes area.
I think the Great Lakes area fits. I've always been confused by it. I'm from Wisconsin and Illinois, which is like a straight Midwest down the line.
Yes.
So
That's
when,
Yes.
that's serious Midwest right
yeah,
there. That's
Yeah,
like,
that's the
yeah,
real Midwest. Yeah.
when
we're
my
the Rust
wife
Belt.
is from Iowa, and she told me, she's like, well,
Oh,
Wisconsin really isn't a part of the Midwest. And I went, I am sorry. What now?
yeah,
Like, if you tell me Ohio, I'll like, okay, I get it. It depends where you draw the line. But Wisconsin is literally like center, straight mass down the
Yeah.
line.
see,
Yeah.
okay, I have to
Yeah.
say this because we're mentioning Iowa and Ohio in the same sentence, in the same conversation. I believe there are people in this country, especially on the east and west coasts, who all they know is that there are states out there somewhere with I's and O's in them,
Yes.
and they don't know where they are on the map. They're just like it's got an I in it and an O in it, and maybe one has two O's in it. I'm not sure. It's somewhere in that vast space
That's why
between
the Great
Los
Lakes are
Angeles and New
important.
York.
That's why it's
Yes.
important to bring up the Great Lakes. You
Hmm.
should know where those are are,
Hmm.
Yes,
are at,
exactly.
and
Yes.
we're both on Lake Erie,
Okay.
Yes.
which of course is the greatest of the Great Lakes,
Yes.
and I'm
The
super proud
coldest.
to live where I live because the Great Lakes
Yes.
are an amazing unique part of the world. I mean, not just the United States or North America, but literally in the world to have this
Hmm.
huge collection of, freshwater lakes that you cannot see across. They look like
Hmm.
oceans when you stand on, the
They
shore of
be
them.
they behave like oceans. They have their own
Yeah,
tide and
so
all that.
they don't.
Yeah. Yes.
Hey,
We should clarify.
we sent most of the Great Lakes your way a few days ago. They were
Yeah.
showing how the winds
Thank you
literally
very much.
almost emptied out my end of Lake Erie and sent it all down your way.
Well, we should clarify for the sake of those who don't know. You and I are on either ends of Lake Erie. You are in
Yeah,
That's
Northwest Ohio.
amazing.
yeah,
I'm Northeast Ohio. So yes, and we
yeah.
are
I'm
about
north
what
and I'm northwest.
220 or 20 miles apart. I don't even know. Was it 2 hours?
something like
Something
that.
like that. Yeah, yeah.
About
Wow.
2 hours. Yeah, a drive. Yeah,
Yeah,
two and two and
yeah.
a half. Yeah.
I'm from Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. That's like my
Oh,
OG area. So
okay.
when my like reference point for water, I love that somehow this became a talking point here because it gives me the opportunity to say Iowa doesn't have like real lakes mostly. There's like two and they're whatever, it's Iowa. Whereas that's where I'm used to. There's Lake Michigan, there's Lake Geneva, there's Green Lake, these beautiful, large freshwater lakes that are not ravines and ditches, and just
But they're not
totally
great.
that they are not great. They are
Lake
not as great as the Great
Lake
Lake.
Geneva is where Gen Con is that
Yes.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I knew of Lake Geneva when I was in high school. My friends and I, who played D&D, we all wanted to go to Lake Geneva to go to Gen Con.
It is
We
one of
never
those
made it.
random factoids, which to that point, with talking about Ohio, if I recall correctly, two native Ohioans can tell me this. In the Superman movie that came out this last year, there is the Hall of Justice building, which that is a place in Ohio, correct?
It is, but it's actually in Cincinnati, which
Okay.
is like the opposite end of the state from both Jim and me.
Okay.
That is, I believe it
That's
is.
down.
It is a museum of some kind, and I can't think of them. It's called the Museum Center, and I believe um, it's actually like a complex that includes various museums inside of it. I think, but yes, it is in Cincinnati. Now,
Yeah,
anyone watching from Cincinnati is going to be offended because I probably didn't get that right, but um, yes, the location you're talking about, Terrence, is actually in Cincinnati. It's not in Cleveland or Toledo. Yes,
but they did film in Cleveland though. Cleveland is
yes, quite a
metropolis,
bit.
basically. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes, yes. Oh yeah. They were all over the crew was all over downtown Cleveland for half the summer. My wife and I went down to spend a day down there trying to see anything. And they did a really good job with security when the principal actors came out, big barriers mysteriously appeared and just blocked the view of anybody in the cast who was noteworthy, like David Cornsweet or Rachel Brosnahan. We saw a
I
few extras.
They did not film in Toledo. I'm sorry.
We,
Toledo's Hollywood claim to fame is that in the first Avengers movie, in the scene where Loki is comes into that like party, that gala or
Mhm.
whatever, and takes over and all of that, the little quartet or quintet that's playing in there, they're from the Toledo Symphony Orchestra.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
but the exterior of that same shot is filmed in public square in downtown Cleveland. So there you go. The marriage of
Okay.
the marriage of two great Ohio metropolises. So there you go.
Okay.
Okay, so genuine question for you two as authors.
Yes.
I feel like
Now that the geography lesson is
no,
over,
the
yes.
geography lesson is over. Well, I think that this actually is relevant because I have thought, and this is something I try to implement with my writing. How can I make sure that the center mass of story isn't just one of the two coasts? How can I bring some of that narrative into that rich middle area? Because a lot happened there. When I've been writing these Mitch Mayhew stories, I've been trying to. I mean, you had the air route from Chicago to Denver, and just trying to include some more of that. There is actually some people living in between the two areas.
Ohio has a really incredible standing in the United States that it has the most large cities of any one state in the union.
Oh.
And it's generally thought of as this sort of like hayseed, rural
Farm
state.
farm
And
country, yeah.
it has all of that. It really seriously does, but it also has a huge amount of large cities. I mean, we have the three C's, Cincinnati,
Hmm.
Columbus, and Cleveland, but
Hmm.
we have Toledo. The greater
Akron,
Toledo area is almost a half a million people. We have
Akron.
Dayton and Akron and
Hmm.
a few other ones in there. So Toledo in particular is this crossroads because it's literally like right in the middle of Cleveland and Chicago, and then
Hmm.
Detroit and Columbus, and then of course Cincinnati and Dayton down to the south. And it's like a mixture of white and blue collar.
Hmm.
We used to be overrun by gangsters, in the 20s and 30s. All the gangsters from Detroit came down here and kind of took over Toledo. We had the Purple Gang
So
here and
a lot
Lickavola.
like Cleveland, only smaller, and it's just same story. It's just a just slightly
Yeah,
smaller version of Cleveland.
yeah, literally like Toledo
Mhm.
was little Cleveland.
You guys intentionally tried to implement and draw in some of your locale into your writing.
Mm.
uh,
Especially this guy.
yes, I definitely. The funny thing was when I was trying to come up with a clever name for the all-purpose every town USA that my Midnight Guardian books are set in. Um, I I tried a couple different things and discovered that they were all taken. And then for some reason I landed on Union City, but only later after the first book was published did I realize, oh, there's like two or three Union cities in the United States, probably more actually. But to your question, Terrence, I would say that Union City is sort of a conglomeration of a little bit New York, a little bit Chicago, and yes, a little bit Cleveland. There are certain aspects of the town that definitely resonate with what we are here. But also, I try to capture little bits of Chicago and New York as well. Again, like I try to be like it's,
Hmm.
and I think Terrence, you and I talked about this last time when I was on your podcast. It's just I'm trying to capture a little bit of it's like every town USA,
Yeah.
Metropolis, just anybody could it could be the city outside your window.
Yeah. Which I think you captured really well with Union City, and it reminds me of that golden age area. This is a slight tangent. There was at one point going to be, I've driven through Metropolis in Illinois, and I read in like this wonderful like publication history of Superman, just before the new movie came out, that they were talking about originally, like back when Walt Disney World first became a big thing. They wanted to turn Metropolis, Illinois, into this DC Comics theme park world where they were going to try to make it this um, little like golden age place. And of course, it never happened, but because, money, things like that, petty details.
I wonder if that was there was a plans for, well, or an idea at least of a Superman amusement park, and they
Yes,
actually had Neil Adams drawings of it in
I've seen those. Yes,
one of the Treasury editions, and I used to just stare and stare and stare at that and trying to
just stare it into
wish
reality.
it
Yeah,
into reality, and of course it
manifest it.
never
Yeah,
happened, and it would have just
yeah,
been spectacular,
I've seen the
super.
same thing. Mhm.
So, talking about heroes and pulp, how did you guys start Flinch Books? Like, what is the origin story? 2015, I feel like, is this unique little golden age pocket. And I think it's because that same way that I think a lot of people, they have like a particular decade or a particular like 5 year point where they're like, humanity peaked at this point. I think The Nice Guys came out in 2016, and my entire reference point, apparently, for fiction is built around 2015 to 2017. So I'm curious, what was it in 2015 that you guys are like, let's start our own book publishing company?
All
When
right,
did
who's
we
good?
go insane, basically? Yeah.
Yeah, who's
You
going
want
to
me to
do this,
start
Jim?
this one?
Yeah, I mean, luckily I've heard we've done this before, and both of our versions are pretty similar, which is a good thing. But yeah, go
Well,
ahead.
yeah, which
You
is a
start.
good thing, right? Yeah,
When
yeah.
you're being interrogated by the man
No,
in the suit, you can
um,
have stories that match.
I in 20 by 2015, I had already had some stuff published, all through other publishers, but I think I had gotten to the point where I said, I really want to do this myself. I didn't want to stop working with other publishers, but it had been a couple of years by then, and I realized that there were things that I wanted to do my way.
Hmm.
Like I had learned enough about what it meant to work with publishers, and there were a few things that were very, very special to me, particular to me, that I really wanted to, for lack of a better term, control.
Hmm.
And covers being one of them, and kind of, well, content to editing, kind of across the board.
Just
And
pulled
I
up a
said,
couple of these amazing covers
thank you very
that you
much.
guys have here.
Thank you very much. And so by then, I thought, I can do this, right? I mean, how hard can it be, right?
What could go wrong?
So, I had been part of anthologies by that point and found that I really loved the idea of fiction anthologies.
Hmm.
And I said, well, that's what I want to do. And I have zero idea how I stumbled upon the idea of doing a Fletcher Hanks anthology. Fletcher Hanks being this guy that worked in comic books in the 1940s for literally 3 years. That's all. But he was the original Gonzo comic creator, wrote and drew his stuff for some kind of smaller companies. And it was just insane. I think it was literally like no one was really paying attention to what he was doing as long as he was handing work in and it was filling, books. He had 10 different characters that he created over those 3 years. Sometimes it was only maybe like one or two stories, and then there were other characters that there were more stories. But it was the weirdest stuff, like these godlike beings sometimes, and really weird ideas about punishment. And some of the weirdest art ever, like characters with teeny tiny little heads and these gigantic bodies. Some of his
Or
characters
vice
were,
versa. Heads
I'm
with
sorry,
no bodies, right? Heads with no bodies too. Wasn't there something like
yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah. There were like floating heads and things like that.
Hmm.
The Stardust, the space wizard or whatever he was called, was one of them. This literally this, and there was no conflict in these. They like somebody was doing something wrong, and the characters would appear and visit this weird brand of punishment. Like it wasn't enough like you caught them and put them in jail or anything like that. No, you had to like make their bodies disappear until they were just a head, and then the heads had to be like thrown at gorillas so that the gorillas would stomp on them or something. It was just literally stuff like that. He had a jungle character named Phantoma who was this like female jungle spirit goddess thing that her head, when she went into action, her head became a skull, and she, just like made people come apart, and all this really weird stuff. He was a strange individual. So I said, all that stuff is public domain, and public domain, was kind of like getting real hip back
Hmm.
then. And I said, I'm going to get 10 writers. We're each going to take one of the characters, and we're going to do a Fletcher Hanks fiction anthology, and I'm going to sell maybe 10 copies of this thing, but I'm going to do it. And I found the writers. I was one of them. And we started to put this together, and I soon learned that I didn't have what it took to get this over the finish line by myself. I was number one, I wasn't really technically proficient, and it really needed better editing and a few other things. And it just dragged along and it pretty much stalled. And I finally realized that I needed to take on a partner in this little venture that I wanted to do. I didn't want to give up on the idea. And somewhat recently, I had met John at Pulp Fest
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
felt like, we were of like mind, hit it off. Because it was funny. I said, well, who do I know that I can do that? And no lie, John was. I think he was the first person that I thought of. It seemed to like make sense, and as I joked to him, he was from Ohio and he has the same initials as me, and that was the criteria right there.
Well, and I
So
think it's worth noting. I think it's worth noting, Tim, that at the time we really didn't know each other that well.
no, no, I
I
mean
think
we had met maybe
we had
twice.
met a couple
Maybe,
times at Pope Fest
Wow.
back when it
yeah,
was in
yeah, but
Columbus. Yeah.
I I kind of pride myself on being a fairly good judge of character, and
Except for that one time 10
I
years
have
ago.
a what?
Except for that one time 10 years ago.
Said that one time 10 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, hey, you know what? You, I can find a new partner. Okay. I got people lined up,
Oh, yeah, I believe it.
yeah. So it was as simple as, hey, I contacted him. I'm like, hey, do you want to do this thing? And I think he initially liked the idea, but I dangled the carrot. And the carrot was among putting these fiction anthologies together, this would also be a venue for your own works.
Hmm.
And
Right.
that was the key.
Was the
That-
sell because I had the Midnight Guardian was in a drawer. He had been plodding
Oh.
along very, very slowly. I'd
Hmm.
say he was half finished at that point. And the whole time I was working on it, the reason I was going so slow was because I kept thinking, what the hell am I going to do with this thing when it's done? I can't think of a place that would really where would this land?
Hmm.
And just so and as long as I didn't know where it might land, I wasn't really compelled to take it over the finish line. But then along comes this guy who I barely know and makes this suggestion, this offer, and I said, "Well, okay, that's because there was some hesitation because at the time my kids were 14 and 12, not
Mm.
babies by any means, but just they
Hmm.
were adolescents or pre-adolescents, and they're just you got to
Yeah.
do the guidance, the parenting guidance thing,
Hmm.
and and I had a full-time job, and it I had to ask myself, do I want to take this on too? But then when somebody says, hey, that thing you've been writing for a while, that
Mm.
could see the light of day if we do this right. That was all I needed to hear.
And I don't
I mean,
think that,
there were other reasons why I wanted to do it too, but
Hmm.
I would say that yes, that was the defining moment.
well, to work with me, of course. That's,
Absolutely, yeah,
little did he realize what he was getting into, as we like to say. But I don't think I knew you had any like a novel going or whatever. I mean, that was
no,
just one of those
Oh.
like happy little
I hadn't talked about it
accidents.
yet. I hadn't talked
Yeah,
about it to anybody. I hadn't
yeah,
really. It's like I said, it was plodding along very slowly, but I didn't. I wasn't taking it very seriously because I didn't think it would go anywhere. But then
yeah.
here was an opportunity for it to see the light of day. Yeah.
Yeah. And we very, very quickly realized that, we were pretty much in lockstep with how we wanted to do that. I
Hmm.
remember
Mm,
John, kind of saying like, well, I have a full-time job and I have a full-time job too. And,
right.
and like kind of like we can't we can't be doing nothing but putting out books or whatever. And that was no problem. I mean, it became pretty evident pretty quickly that we wanted to do 1 to 2 books a year. It was going to be, we wanted quality, not quantity.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
and we've
Mm.
stuck with that for 10 years now. And it's nice because we did several anthologies.
Hmm. I have
And
two of them here.
thank you.
There you
Restless,
go.
Thank you
which
very much.
fantastic mummy books.
Thank you.
And then Occupied Pulp,
Oh,
which
I'm so proud of that one. So proud
such
of that one. Yes.
a great cover on it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So, it worked out great. John also was as serious about covers
Hmm.
as I was, and editing,
Hmm.
I mean, we basically said, let's kind of take the thing we knew already and the
Hmm.
experiences that we both had, and then see like how can we go past those? How can we make those better? How can we
We were,
have the best covers out there? How can we have some of the best editing out there?
Hmm.
How can we create something that people will want to be part of? And my goodness, I think that's where we're at right now, is that we
I think,
have this
I
fun
think we
little
were good at,
house.
yeah, I think we were good at identifying what we didn't want to do, or
Hmm.
we were
Oh,
good at
definitely.
saying, we don't want to do it this way. We had
Hmm.
seen enough,
Yeah,
and I don't want to disparage anybody in this little universe that we run in, but we had seen enough
Hmm.
things that were done in a way that we didn't want to do it. So even
yeah,
if we weren't sure how we were going to go forward, we could say, all right, let's we know we don't want to do it that way. So
yeah,
I think it
definitely.
helped a lot that Jim and I are very close in age, as he mentioned previously, as he often does. I'm the older of the two, but having said that, we both we grew up with the same sort of pop
Yeah.
culture touchstones. I
Yep.
think
Yes.
we watched a lot of the same TV. I think we were
Hmm.
into a lot of the same movies.
Mhm.
read a lot of the same books, or at least types of books or types of movies. I'm not quite the Star Wars fan that he is. Um, but I certainly I was exposed. I grew up in a time when it was just, it was ubiquitous.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so we have a lot of commonality in terms of like I say, pop culture touchstones that we both. I mean, one of us can just say a word and the other one goes, "Yeah, I remember that. I remember that
Yeah.
from TV or whatever." It's almost a shorthand that we have, that by virtue of just being sort of the same age, of the same geographical area, of the same sort of sensibility.
Hmm. Which is a really big thing. The more that I do the show, the more I read in different genres, the more that I study pop culture history itself. Just seeing how the context of those touchstones make a dramatic difference. At one point, I realized my wife really likes Victorian literature. Some of her turns of phrase fall within that particular niche in the
Sure.
same way that my vocabulary evokes the vocabulary of my own parents, because then my
Yeah.
dad is from New Jersey, my mom is from Illinois. So there's certain like idiosyncrasies that I carry over in my
Oh yeah.
vocabulary from
Yeah.
those regional
Yep.
conversational styles.
I'm
Yep.
glad you brought that up, because that is another thing that John and I have in common, and very strongly, though, is that our fathers pretty much made us who we are with a heavy emphasis on pop culture.
Hmm.
Yep.
We talk about this a lot, about what we got from those guys. Um, Sadly, John's father is no longer with
Yeah.
us. My dad is, but music, books,
Hmm.
movies, TV,
Radio before TV.
yeah,
Radio.
and most importantly, like pulps. My
Hmm.
dad loved the pulp characters. He was born in 1936, and he had pulp magazines. He listened to the radio dramas. He
Hmm.
loved the shadow on the radio more than he did the shadow in the pulps, which is weird, but it is what it is. But that's another thing, that we always tend to mention is the important role that his father and my father played in that development to make us who we are today.
The thing I've often said is that by the time I was 15 or 20, I knew far more about the pulps and the cliffhanger serials and radio drama than most, if not any other kid my age. I knew about it. I absorbed it into my DNA by virtue of my dad, who talked about it all the time. And I remember, and I've told the story before, when I think I was 17 when the first Indiana Jones movie came out. And there's a trailer on TV, and my dad's looking at this, and he says, "Well, hell, that's just Doc Savage with a hat and a bullwhip." And at the time, I'm 17, I'm thinking, "The hell's Doc Savage?" But you know, it just he just and Terrence, you and I have talked about this before. Everything comes from somewhere,
Yeah.
just like everything we watch and listen to and read and consume right here and right now in 2025 is just sort of it's an echo, or
Hmm.
it's a descendant of things that people were watching and reading and consuming 70, 80, 90 years ago.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I've been debating. I don't think I'm ever going to quite do it because it's just a little too complicated. But the create like a family tree of hero archetypes, because
Yeah.
if you there's J.R. Sanders has written Nate Ross PI detective novels. What I like about them are he has basically his 30s private eye is in Hollywood and gets like drawn into Western sets and meeting cowboys. And
Mm.
what has been fascinating about it is seeing that just kind of uncanny valley of the way that the Western archetype hero and the detective, the PI, the hard-boiled, kind of has a similar through line. You just start changing the
Yes.
hats and a few references.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I just think that that is a fascinating way that characters have evolved. We have knights, we have cowboys, we have detectives, we have the spies. And you see where superheroes evolve from then the pulp heroes who are also offshoots of those major archetypes. And it's just
And
fascinating to
science
see.
fiction too. There's
Yes.
science fiction. I
Hmm.
mean, I mean,
Star Wars is a Western in
I
some
think a
ways.
guy named George Lucas pretty much proved, that space opera and science fiction or whatever has so much connection with Westerns.
Hmm.
You know, that's really interesting because that I was just thinking about the other thing that we were in total agreement for is that we wanted when we wanted to do things differently or
Hmm.
whatever, which was also in our content
Hmm.
where we have traditional pulp content, but then we also have tried to find, new things to do and say with a lot of the tropes and cliches or
Okay.
or what
Can
other.
can I just leap in and say one of the things I admire most about you guys is that the Midnight Guardian and Sergeant Janice
you know.
are perfect in that they are not just retreads of other characters. They feel genuinely original to the extent that Indiana Jones feels original, but more so because Indiana Jones, you can still go, oh, well, that's Charlton Heston from here, that's that pulp from there. Whereas I think you guys have done a really great job of taking that synthesis of the various things that have existed in pop culture and creating unique characters. And I would just want to give you guys major kudos and shout out to people
Thank
listening.
you.
Check out these books because they genuinely feel like all the fun that you get from knowing about like the Shadow, the Lone Ranger, Sherlock Holmes, and it really creates something new. And that's not easy by any
No,
stretch.
it's not. I
No.
could tell you there are probably at least a dozen different influences that make up the Midnight Guardian. I mean, the Untouchables, the Green Hornet, I think to some degree Batman, the Shadow,
Pie
Doc Savage. I
Smasher.
just yes,
Spy
Spy Smasher.
Smasher.
So yes, it just there's a lot that either consciously or subconsciously became part of that mythos, and it just sort of like took on a life of its own. So I think to your point, Terrence, that that's yeah, it just I mean, it's like I say, it's partly conscious, it's partly subconscious. Jim, I don't know what your process was like when you were developing Sergeant Janice. I see a lot going on, as Terrence is saying. I see a lot going on in that character.
Yeah, um, it worked the way it should work, which is that I got excited about a subgenre of pulp from somebody who also was getting real excited about those characters. I say that I think it's in the first volume or whatever that I have to thank Alan Moore
Hmm.
for Sergeant Janice because Alan Moore turned me on to Carnacki
Hmm.
the Ghost Finder from William Hope Hodgson.
Hmm.
Alan Moore had him and talked about him in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen
Hmm.
comics, and I then said, "Oh, well, Carnacki sounds really cool." So I read the original Carnacki stories, and I said, "I this occult detective thing is really cool, and it's a subgenre of
Hmm.
the consulting detective, basically, of Sherlock Holmes and all of that." And but like I needed to do I needed to do something different, and that's where the epistolary thing came in. And I was so proud of myself. If I could ever feel a little like Paul McCartney, that happened to me, where Paul McCartney supposedly woke up one morning and had Yesterday, like the entire
Hmm.
tune and melody and everything in his head, but he went around asking everybody, like, "What is this tune?" Because he didn't want to believe that he had come up with something that was that original and good. And I was doing that with Sergeant Janice. I'm like, I don't want to have like a Watson type of character tell the story. I want to have like different points of view and like maybe his clients tell the stories. And I started going around to people in the know, in the background, going like, well, "What do you think about that?" Like I couldn't have come up with that on my own. And people like Will Murray and Bill Maynard are telling me like, yeah, we don't know of anything like that. Yeah, that sounds kind of original. So that's it, it totally grew out of that. And Sergeant Janice is one of those things that has really kind of like gone places that I would never have imagined it would have gone and never really planned about it. Well, what's funny is where John has Union City, which to me
Hmm.
is a living, breathing place. And I always cited that as one of the things that I love about those books is that the city is a character in itself. Sergeant Janice lives in this very ethereal place that's not, it's like the
Hmm.
opposite. It's not locked down. It's a place that is whatever it needs to be at that
Hmm.
moment, and I kind of like that because it's, like a ghost itself. It's Mount Airy and it changes and flows and mutates, and sometimes it's like a little small town and sometimes it's like a city, a big city.
And you
And
never
I
really commit to a specific time frame, do you? As far as I know,
There is a time frame for it, and I've never really
you
tried to hold that in. It's
Hmm.
set in the 1920s. It's
Hmm.
it's definitely after World War One. It's set in the
Hmm.
1920s, most likely the latter half of the 1920s. What I is not locked down is where it takes place.
Hmm.
And it's people said, is this in like the United States or is it in England? And I usually say yes, or no. And I mean, I've written it in different ways and I've used different terminology where I
Hmm.
think one time I said, instead of elevator, I said lift. And somebody from England who read the book was like, aha, I got you. You said lift. I said, yeah, but what about this over here where I say this? And that's very definitely an American term, so but that I think kind of just fits in with that,
Hmm.
that ghostly quality that I'm going for there. But yeah, I thank you. That's huge compliments because I think both those series are really good examples of the Flinch way. And it's funny because they're probably the most traditional of our stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
Everything
yeah.
else is kind of like,
Well,
I mean,
who else writes a book about a anthology about the Lemon Herbert's world tour?
I know, right? Yes, yes, thank you. Yes, that's a perfect example. That's a perfect example of I love 60s psychedelic, you know, that era and I like pulp teams. So, smash them together and you got the Lemon Herberts, well, you had Restless. You were holding up Restless.
Hmm.
That was literally like, hey, we want to do a horror anthology. And it's like, well, but what? Do we just do horror stories every like
Hmm.
and then it was like, okay, we are absolutely not doing vampires.
Or
We're
zombies,
absolutely not doing werewolves. We are absolutely not doing vampires and werewolves together because they've been done to, pardon the pun, death.
zombies
Everybody's done
too.
them. That's just been milked dry. And it's like, well, what? And
Hmm.
oh, zombies. Yeah, no zombies. Everybody's done zombies, and I think I had the great idea of, well, what about mummies? Like nobody does mummies, Like mummies is going to be the next big monster. I bet you we're going to be ahead of the
Still
curve.
waiting.
Yeah,
Been about seven,
we're
six,
still
7 years since we. Yeah, we're
uh,
waiting.
but you know what? We got a really, we think, a unique, anthology out of it because it's as like the unofficial catchphrase for that book is not just Egyptian mummies.
Hmm. Well,
It's
I
got
think
mummies from all over the world.
that's really the thing that just struck me when I read Restless is that you did a great job highlighting people who've been preserving bodies for all around the world.
Yeah. It's
And
it's
Right.
one of those things that is found in pretty much every culture on the
mhm.
planet. The preservation of the dead.
So we've got Flinch books. Where did the name come from? Because like that's a
Uh,
genuine question here. Like,
that's a Jim question. Yeah, that's definitely a Jim question. That's take it away, Jim. That's all you.
You can tell that came into being when it was just me because I think it's one he doesn't say it, but that's the one thing that I think John, if he could change something, if he could go back and change something, it would be the name
It's.
of
I'm
the
not gonna
of the
lie. It's an unusual choice. Or
yeah, yeah.
it literally means to back away from something, which is probably not the kind of branding you want to do for your for the product you're putting on the market. Like don't get too close. This is going to
Let
be
me put a let
painful.
me put a
Better back
positive spin
away.
on this, Terrence. I need to put a positive spin on this. It really means being surprised by something, right? Yeah, it's yeah, Flinch books, Major Flinch. Hey, Major Flinch, haha. I, I, I a long while back was thinking about doing a collection of short stories from me, and I had one that I wrote about a Christmas that story that really happened to me when I was 5 years old.
Mhm.
And I called the story Flinch, and that came from my I had two nicknames when I was little from my older brother. He called me Irving, which really long story behind that one. And
Glad we didn't use that name. Yeah.
he
Go
called
ahead.
yeah, I mean, can you imagine we were Irving
We
books?
could have
Yeah.
been Irving books. Yeah.
Yeah, Irving books. Yeah, take your
Lesser
pick,
of two
John.
evils.
Come on,
Yeah.
Flinch or Irving, But um my brother, boy, big brothers, you know how they
Mhm.
are.
I'm the
Love
biggest brother. Yep, I know.
he loved to do that thing where he'd be walking through the room and as he'd pass me, he'd do one of those like act like he was gonna punch me in the face, or something like that. And he'd literally go, Major Flinch, why'd you flinch, Flinch? Huh? Huh? Yeah, that was a real joy, let
What a
me tell
sweet
you.
guy.
So yeah, so that name stuck to me. He would call me Flinch. Um, and so I that story was called Flinch, and the collection was actually going to be called Flinch.
Mm. Hmm.
And I don't know. Yeah, when I was like, I need a name for this little publishing house, and that occurred to me, and that stuck. And I remember I had to tell John, like, oh, and by the way, because I was telling him all the good stuff, and oh, by the way, it's called Flinch Books. And
It was followed by
but
silence. Yeah.
but we have a really cool logo.
You guys do have a really cool logo. Like, okay, for what it's worth, I love the name Flinch Books
Uh-huh.
because I think that it really gives a good shock factor. Literally. Like, I
Yes.
feel
Yeah.
when I hear flinch, it's one of those words that you get a visceral response to, which
Yeah.
is so much more interesting than I look at like some of these random publisher names and I'm like, who picked that? Like, it means nothing. It's interchangeable with anything else. Come on, guys. Let's do something interesting. And Flinch Books is an interesting name.
Yeah, you
It's
want you want to come up with a name that is rooted in childhood family trauma. You know,
yeah,
Yes.
right.
that's
What's
what you do.
more
Yeah,
pulp than that?
Yeah, it's hey, maybe it's therapy.
that's
I
right.
I,
That's
I
right.
like to picture Metamorpho saying, "Hey, that's a cool name."
Well, I never, Jim. I never asked you what does your brother think of all this? I mean, what
I
does he
have
have?
no idea. I
Okay.
I don't talk to him anymore, obviously.
Well, okay.
No. I it's a sad part of my family and friends who are not in the publishing business. None of them read my stuff. I mean, not even my dad. No, my dad read the first Sergeant Janice book.
Hmm.
I forgot to
Mhm.
say that. It's just, I don't know. It's that old thing, and I was just talking to somebody about this. It's that old thing of if it's not the big boys, if it's
Mhm.
not Penguin, Simon and Schuster, blah blah
Right.
Chronicle books, blah 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 blah. Whoever's big now, I don't even know anymore, really.
They've all eaten each other.
Then it's
Yes.
not real. It's not a real book. Indie is not a real book, is not a
Yes.
real thing. Indie publishing, like if it's not, if you can't walk into Barnes and Noble or, I was gonna say or go on Amazon, but obviously we're on Amazon, but then it's not, it's I don't know, fan fiction, I
Which,
mean,
It's a persistent stigma that yeah, I think
mhm,
we're all just trying to fight against every day and make small incremental
mhm,
um, move forward movement
mhm.
in that regard. But
we're
Which
chipping
it's
away
just
at it little by
I
little.
think
yeah,
that
right.
it's starting to turn a little bit more from what I've heard and seen, just because now there are so many more authors that are starting to do hybrid. They're doing some stuff with larger publishers, they're doing some stuff on their own. You are starting to see that turn
Yeah.
where I met a guy who's got an adventure novel coming out this next year. He basically got told by his agent, I think, or editor, I can't remember which, was like, I think at this point you're better off just self-publishing it because your
Mm.
genre niche here, this is where that audience is starting to go, rather than going to the Barnes and Noble of it all. Just
Yeah.
because, again, the market is changing and the audience and demographics are starting to change, which is kind of cool to see. But
Sure.
also, you're right, it's chipping away, but bit by bit. To your comment, Jim, I am firmly believe that phrase, "a prophet is not without honor except in his own country." The closer people are to you, the less likely they are to read your stuff,
Yeah.
which
I think that's true.
is sadly, I think, kind of the way it usually goes. My best friends, I don't think have read any of my, not true. One of them has read one of my books.
He can't be that good if we know him. I mean, it's just it's this weird
Yes.
misperception. I can't say that's true. I mean, I have several friends who do dial into my stuff on a pretty regular basis, so I can't, but I understand the concept. I understand the phenomenon. I think more often than not, it's true that like I think there is this weird perception that like, well, you can't be famous because I know you. It's just it's kind of counterintuitive, but it's just I think it's sort of a persistent perception, and you just I don't know where that comes from, and I don't know how you address that, but um, there it is.
I mean, we just keep plugging away,
That's the thing.
Yeah,
we're
that's
just doing what we do, and I've gotten to the point where I just don't really worry about it
Mhm.
anymore. I like to joke, I publish books that 10 people buy or 10 people, yeah, 10 people buy and 5 people read. That,
yeah. Well,
and that's not
well,
too
like,
much to
well,
mark.
I will say though, I mean, our we have a Facebook page that is now hovering around 1,000 followers, and
Can
I don't know if every one of those followers is reading every book, but certainly, I think we're writing and publishing for more than 10 people at this point,
Yeah.
maybe 20. You
to
never know.
to that point, guys, I just want to quickly call out here. The impressive thing is you guys have averaged about 2 books a year for the last 10 years. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
You've heard that 10,000 hours rule, I'm guessing. Well, great book. So premise is that Malcolm Gladwell had study book. He's the one who popularized the idea. If you spend 10,000 hours doing something, you become a proficient at it. Um, Robert Greene, author of a fantastic book on mastery, the idea of just getting really good at a craft. He kind of translated that into what does that look like over time? And his concept was that's about a decade's worth of experience. You guys have been writing and, more importantly, publishing consistently for a decade. Do you feel like masters yet? I will say your writing definitely lends itself to mastery
Hmm.
at this point.
Hmm.
I think I can't speak for Jim, but I think of myself. What is the word? Journeyman.
Mm.
Somebody who continues to work at it in an effort to just continue to get better. Um, yeah, and exactly where it's all going to go, I don't know. But yeah, I think I and we are getting better at the writing and the publishing, the creative aspect and the business aspect. Um, but
Two very
we'll
different skill sets, which you guys are
absolutely.
doing an amazing job. And that's why I want to say is so impressed about Flinch books is that writing something is relatively easy. Like writing is hard. I feel that routinely, but something actually being published is a whole different, like published marketing, etc. That's a whole different skill
Well,
set that takes effort and
it's
a
interesting you
process.
said because a lot of times you hear writers say, "I just want to write. I don't want to get bogged down in the whole business of marketing. I just don't like doing that." Now I've been in marketing for 25 years, and frankly, when I'm like when I'm ankle deep or neck deep in trying to finish a book, like I am right now, all I can think of is God. What I want to do nothing more than just market this book. I just want to be done with it so I can just
Mm-hmm.
start like pitching it to the world.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like the norm. I'm like if we just stop writing and just start marketing this book because that's what I really that's a lot less work to me. That's
That's
just
the
sort of
only
that's
reason I
more
write. That's the only reason I write is to get to the end. I just
yes
want the end result. I don't want that middle stuff where you have to sit there and do all that
yes
that writing junk, But you know, going back to the mastery thing, I'm not so sure I even know what what it like if I reached master status because I always feel like what we do is just so odd or weird, that it doesn't seem to fit in with we have a lot of friends who are self-publishing
Hmm.
and I love that because we just have all these different, examples and voices and all of that. But I don't think any of us really like line up, Flinch is as different from Brian K. Morris as
Hmm.
from Charles Millhouse as from even Meteor House, our friends at Meteor House, I
Hmm.
mean, we all do different things, so I'm not sure, what true mastery would be for Flinch books, other than we're remaining true to ourselves.
Hmm.
We have never wavered from the tenets
Hmm.
of Flinch. They're not actually written down, so don't ask. Um,
You don't have them on a poster somewhere behind you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in some ways it's sort of a well-oiled machine by now. We both know what our strengths are, and weaknesses, I
Yeah,
mean, literally, I'm not Mr. Editor. I will do it, but that's where John comes in, he's the much
I
more
get nervous.
grounded one, of us.
That's
Uh,
scary if you think of it that way, but yeah, okay.
but
I mean,
but
I will say this, and this is something Jim said in an interview we did in a podcast. I can't tell you when, it's been a few years. I don't remember who we were talking to, but it was a setting like this. We were both online, and Jim made a reference to we are like the outsiders of this sort of
Mm.
self publish,
mm,
pulpy movement, whatever. And to me, I I never thought of it that way, but I consider it to be the truth, and I consider it in some ways a badge of honor. Like we're like we do it
mhm.
differently, and
Hmm.
so people like might look at it askance, like what are they doing? It's sort of their genre bending.
I'm sure we got a lot of that. What the
But
hell are
no,
you
but
doing?
well, I mean, okay,
What
I don't
they're
know if I
really saying is you guys really don't want to sell books, do you?
no, I don't know. I think I would well, okay. Let's be honest, Jim. We have we ever won an award? We have not,
No,
and
we don't care to.
and
Yeah.
I don't really consider that an issue. I'm just like
Hmm.
I just want to make
I'm
the
not
books
here.
that
Yeah,
we make.
that's I'm not here to do that.
Hmm.
We're not
No,
here to do that. That's
Hitchcock
not
never won Best Director.
there you go.
yeah, okay,
There you go. Yeah. And other people that's very important to them, and I
yeah,
totally understand that
I
and
respect that, but I
respect
just
that. Yeah, but we'd rather put the brain energy and the effort into getting our books over the finish line and having
Hmm.
them the best that they can, possibly be and come up with concepts that maybe other people say like, huh, I wouldn't have thought of that. But but yeah, so if that's all what means it means to be a master, then I guess we are. We're
Well,
masters of our own fate.
that's fair because, again, you guys have consistently published for a decade. How many small businesses remain in operation for a decade? That's not an easy feat. And writing the volume you guys have is not an easy feat. So hats off to you both. I'm really excited about the future of Flinch Books. Jim, you just had a new Sergeant Janice book come out this last year. Do you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was, John, and I meant to say this to you. You certainly don't have to be concerned with however long it takes for a Midnight Guardian volume to come out because I just pulled up in my Facebook memories a note about writing the fourth Sergeant Janice book, but the note was from 3 years ago, something like that. Like
Mhm.
I literally began that thing 3, 4 years ago, and only this year got that thing over the finish line. So don't worry about that.
Mhm.
Um, it was it was an idea that I had for a while, which is like most of my ideas are like that. They sit in my head for a while, and it's it's kind of an ending. It's 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 not like I don't think it's like Conan Doyle trying to get rid of Sherlock Holmes. I don't think it's like that, but I don't know. May other people will have to be the judge of that. But if this turns out to be the last Sergeant Janice volume, then I would be happy with the way it is. But um, it fits in with what I want to do, which is the occult detective genre, but in a different way.
Hmm.
And again, I went down the road of writing something that I don't know where the heck it came from. It's basically about a serial killer. Like
Mm.
and I'm
Hmm.
writing first person serial killer. It's about a serial killer who is a la Jack the Ripper. He is
Hmm.
writing to the authorities. In this case, he's writing to the editor in chief of a newspaper in Mount Airy, and basically like regaling them, the editor with his adventures of being a serial killer.
Hmm.
And Janice comes into it because the killer sort of makes the mistake of killing somebody that mattered to
Mm.
Janice. And Janice takes a hand in it, and the serial killer is not happy because basically when he kills somebody, he doesn't want to hear that went on to their great reward and that somebody helped them,
Hmm.
break the ties with their spirit and send it on to their great reward. And he gets really pissed at who is this Sergeant Janice guy and why is he meddling in my affairs? And it goes from there, and boy does it go from there. He really gets up in Sergeant Janice's face, and he takes it very seriously, and it moves to a level that I don't think anybody could ever have imagined. But on that journey, there's like all this crazy stuff that happens. I didn't even go into Sergeant Janice's house in the third book, and I love his house, Janice
Hmm.
house, and how it set up and everything. And one whole half of this novel is set at Janice house, so I finally got back there the way I wanted to. But then in the process, I also introduced a whole new character that I thought, wow, this guy would be really cool to spin him off into, adventures. So, but it's
I
called,
liked how op I liked how open-ended that book
Mm.
was, and whether intentionally or otherwise, it just when I read it, I remember thinking, this, like you said, Jim, this could be an ending. It could be a beginning.
yeah,
It could be just
yes,
another chapter. There could be another book. Um,
yeah.
and I think that's the case with I think all the Janice books. It's just sort of like
My
the
intention is to write endings that are beginnings and
Hmm.
beginnings that are endings. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I
Mhm.
like those books that there's one part of that ending that is very finite, and then but there's enough there that should the demand be there, then we can go on. There's a volume that has always been in the back of my head, and that's basically, for lack of a better term, Sergeant Janice Year One. And I
Ooh.
thought
Hmm.
maybe this would be, if there is going to be a fifth volume, maybe that's the time to do it because there's definitely some kind of an ending at the end of book four. So maybe this is the point where you go back to the beginning and you lay out things that will tell you why things are the way they are throughout books one through four.
Okay.
It's called Sergeant Janice in the House That Loved Death.
Hmm.
It was originally supposed to be entitled Sergeant Janice in the House That Loved Pasta, but then John said, no, no, that's
I would
no.
never say no to pasta. I'm half
Yeah,
Italian.
yeah.
It's
So no, it's yeah, the much better and pulpier The House That Loved Death.
That's awesome. It's in my TBR list. I need to get to it. I'm really excited. The cover
Oh
for it
yeah,
also
oh
just
yeah. If
looks
I had $1
stunning.
for everybody who told me that, come on.
It's
Yeah.
true.
Listen, I
We'll have
want
to
to tell you
talk
something.
TBRs at some point.
I want to tell you something. TBRs are the bane of all of our
It's
existence.
true.
And
yes.
I had this revelation, and it was this year that because we all talk about how like we begging people for reviews, basically. Like
Yes.
we never get enough reviews, and it's not that we necessarily that we want a pat on the back, but well, we do, but we just want to know: Are you reading
Hmm.
this? Did you enjoy it? Did you not enjoy it? Whatever. But it dawned on me that the one of the biggest sticking problems and the reason that we probably don't get a lot of reviews is because of people's freaking TBR piles because I think they literally pile up
Hmm.
and you don't get to them and then that pile becomes this weight on your back, I guess. And you never really get around to the books. I mean, we've all heard that. Yeah,
It's
it's in my TBR pile. Like,
it's a what's the word I'm looking for? The book buying and book reading are two different hobbies,
Oh,
of which
absolutely.
one
Yes.
is far easier than the other. I cannot
Yes.
yeah,
walk
Yes.
away from half-price books without probably having at least two to three extra books that are suddenly thrown in there.
Yes.
I
Yes.
It's
have two
That's
books on my
astonishing.
TBR pile, and I will
That's
read them.
that's fantastic,
I don't think
Jim.
I have, unless I've just come back from Pulp Fest, and then it's probably four or five. But I
Hmm.
just recently, so I was at Pulp Fest in August, and I
Hmm.
recently got through those. I'm on to things that I've picked up, after Pulp Fest. But yeah, I don't really do that
That's a
anymore.
probably a
Life's
good
too
move.
short.
I sat out the beginning of the year last year. I was like, I'm going to be really intentional about everything that I read. I'm only going to buy books that I read.
Mhm.
how's that
That
working out for you?
that did not last very long, tragically, but we've got a new year, a new opportunity to right the ship.
Right.
Here's what I would suggest to everybody out there who has that towering TBR pile. Literally go through it
Hmm.
and pull out the ones that you know that you will not get around to read. And those are the ones that you bought because you wanted to have it, which, hey, you should see my library. I get it. And then get those into a pile, the ones that you know damn well that you want to read and you are going to read no matter
Hmm.
what. And I guarantee you that things will go a lot smoother after that. Please do that. And please leave us reviews.
Hmm.
Damn it.
It's true. Leaving a review is the best way of actually letting the author know that you enjoyed the book. Shocking. To quote James Bond, shocking, positively shocking.
John, are you looking at your TBR pile?
Yes, because it's not a pile, Jim. It's a room. It's not a. It's my TBR is not a pile. It
Well,
is
I
a room.
noticed that you're looking up. You're sitting, and
Well,
I'm
it
like,
does.
my God, what if it fell
There's
over? Would it crush you?
Jim
there
is
are there are
calculating the angle of eye line.
Yeah, yeah.
there are one two there are three books. I this past summer I moved my office from the main floor of our house down to the basement.
This is
Because
my TBR pile.
Oh,
That is it.
oh, I still have those. I haven't actually added them to the physical TBR pile, but I keep meaning to get those Batman books on audio so that because that's how I like to enjoy those particular types of
Let me
stories.
just say quickly here,
Hmm.
they may be, I think, the best that, well, I read the first one. The
Hmm.
first one may be one of the very best things that John Jackson Miller has ever written. And that's saying a
That's
lot because
saying a
he's
lot.
written some big, huge stuff or whatever. But I knew I would like it, but I was surprised how much I liked it. It's one of the best Batman novels that I've ever read. And I'm really looking forward to this second one. So there
Hmm.
you go.
John, what can you tell us about the
yes,
next Midnight Guardian book that is on the horizon?
I can tell you it's late. So and Jim and I
Don't
just had a
worry about
conversation
it.
about this a few days ago. So I thought I would. There's the never-ending discussion debate of are you a plotter, are you a pantser? By and large, I have been a plotter up to this
Hmm.
point. But I thought with this book, I'm gonna maybe just try and just loosen it up a little bit and have a general idea of where I'm gonna go, but just sort of see where it takes me. But my fear with that was always, that could be a lot of blind alleys that could eat up a lot of time. And every fear that I had about that version of the process came true.
Oh.
It just like by about late summer, I thought this isn't going to get done by the end of the year. It by doing it this way. Um, so I had to sort of just regroup and just think about exactly what I wanted to accomplish with the story, where I wanted to go. And
Hmm.
having done that, I think I'm moving a little faster now. So yeah, the hope was to have it done by the end of this year, but that's about 3 weeks away. So that's not going to happen, but it is definitely in motion. I'm excited about the story because it takes place at a time when it's early. It's the spring of 1939, and it's just a couple months after the famous, or I should say, the infamous Nazi rally at
Hmm.
Madison Square Garden, New York
Hmm.
City. There's a similar event planned for Union City, and the people who are at the sort of the center of the planning. One is a local politician who's looking to ride this wave of nationalism
Hmm.
for political gain to get political leverage, and the other person is a German scientist with the technology to build and deploy a small army of giant robots. And
I
and
love
it,
it. You don't even have to say anything more past that. I mean, I just
right,
love
giant robots,
it.
giant
Yeah,
robots.
you got me
Yeah,
sold.
yeah,
Yeah.
right, exactly. And if you happen to see the cover reveal we did a couple months ago, you'll discover that in order to really to meet the challenge and to defeat the enemy, the Midnight Guardian has to get airborne to do it. So for the first time in this series, we're strapping on a jetpack and we're taking to the skies, which is just like because the only thing cooler than a pulp hero is a pulp hero who can fly. So in the grand tradition of who was that Sky
Commander
King of the
Cody.
Rocket Man? No, King of the Rocket Man in the
Isn't
40s
that
cliffhanger
Commander
series.
Cody or what
That
am
was
I?
a I don't know. That was a band, wasn't it? I don't know. And then it's just and the Rocketeer in the 80s and 90s um it just it was something I always wanted to do is like for his for as fun as this character is, can I get him off the ground literally and just
Hmm.
what kind of adventure can he get into when he's airborne? And I won't go any farther than that. We are slowly creeping towards World War II.
Hmm.
Um, I think there may be two more books in this series after this one.
Hmm.
After that, it's hard to say, but that's kind of where it's going.
As much
Exciting.
as I love Union City being its own character, the one really other cool thing that comes to mind about the Midnight Guardian books is literally John's advancing of the Midnight
Hmm.
Guardian himself. It's like he's not the same
Hmm.
book as far as like his tech advances and among other things. And I really, really love that. And I mean, this is an incredible leap, if you'll pardon the pun,
Yeah.
with it.
Well,
And
and I
but
think
you know what? It seems completely like logical. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, he should fly, you know?
what also I think is happening with his character, and Terrence, you and I talked about this before, a couple years ago. He's it's this ongoing evolution of like,
Hmm.
well, how do I feel about what I'm doing here? I
Yeah.
am breaking the law essentially, and I am like the second most important lawyer in the city. I'm the assistant DA, and but when the sun goes down, I'm doing stuff that is in complete violation of my professional duties, and would probably land me in jail if I ever got caught.
Hmm.
So he's struggling with that all the time. I think
Yeah.
either overtly or implicitly. I think he's just like every time he puts that mask on, he's asking himself, is this really a smart thing to be doing? But
Yeah.
he
It's the
also knows that
shadow
there's
with the conscience.
exactly right.
That's awesome. All right, guys, this has been a fun conversation. I'm excited about what the next 10 years look like for Flinch Books. Where can people
Oh,
go to learn more about you guys and your work?
we have a website as of last year or the year before.
It,
Finally,
great website, by the way.
www.flinchbooks.com. You can find out about us, our books, our projects, whatever news, whatever's in the pipeline. We try to keep it pretty current. It's kind of a slow time of year for news, but I try to update it every couple of weeks with new information, so you can go there and just learn all about us.
And
Awesome.
there's
Mhm.
it's got all of our books there, and they all have links that will take you to, Amazon so that you can purchase them, please.
And add them to your TBR. Yes.
Add them to the TBR. I will also link your guys' Facebook page and individual
Thank you.
socials in the show notes.
Thank you. Yeah. And John has a brand new website. It's even
I
newer than
Yes.
do.
Bruce books.
It's yes, it went online at the end of May.
Hmm.
And it's about more specifically about stuff I'm working on. Certainly all the Flinch stuff, but other stuff that I do separate and apart from Flinch. I think that's sort of the beauty of Flinch is that
Hmm.
we are Flinch, but we also have our hand in other projects with other publishers and other ventures. We keep it open enough that I think we probably would have burned out a few years ago on Flinch if we were all Flinch all the
Hmm.
time. But I think the fact that we keep our enough doors open that we can keep enough irons in the other fires, it keeps the Flinch process fresh and not stagnant.
We're just starting to go down the road for the next fiction anthology from Flinch.
Yes.
Ooh.
And that's, like we're putting
Hmm.
together the framework for that. And there will be writers that will hear from us fairly soon. They may find some invitations in their email boxes, but it's another one we're excited about, and it's
Hmm.
very, very Flinch. So
Ooh.
be
Yeah.
prepared.
Flinchian is going to be a new term that
Flinchian.
we coin after
Yes.
today's
Yes. I
podcast.
like I
Flinch-esque.
like that.
Yes.
Yeah, Flinchian. The Flinchian era is here.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, guys.
Thank
Until next
you.
time, I'll
Thank
link
you.
everything in the show notes. Take care.
Take care.
Thanks.